Hello, dear friends. Welcome to this program, Our Moments with God, our moments with the Word of God, our moments with the love, mercy, and compassion of God, our moments also with the liturgical celebrations of Palm Sunday. Today, finally, the day arrives and beginning of the Holy Week with today's celebration. And I invite you also to participate in the liturgy of Palm Sunday. Here in Europe, there are no palms because in Europe there are no palms. In India or in the Philippines or in the Middle East, where there are a lot of palm trees or coconut trees, even coconut trees, their leaves could be used as palms. But here in Europe, they use this kind of things, and this is for the priests so that there is red color. So you also notice that there is a change in the color of the vestments. For the whole Lenten season, we used violet color, but today's liturgy begins with the threat of death for Jesus and how he will begin his journey towards the cross. That's why the color is turned into red. There are a lot of things that one can say about the Palm Sunday. First of all, it is a triumphant entry of Jesus into Jerusalem. Why do we call it a triumphant entry? Because he is going to be arrested. So it should be an entry of defeat, would it not? Because he is going to be arrested, taken for trial, and then led to the cross. So why do we call it a triumphant entry? Triumphant entry for two reasons. One is that people all have gathered there to welcome, because a lot of people had come to believe in him and they were following him, though a certain section of people, especially the Pharisees, who were afraid of the Romans and were afraid of their own power and standing slipping out of their own hands, because more and more people were following Jesus. So they were against him, but people were welcoming Jesus into Jerusalem as he rode on a donkey's back. People laid their cloth and carpet with the red carpet welcome they gave him into Jerusalem, one thing. Secondly, because through this procession into Jerusalem, he was going to be victorious, initially dying on the cross, but it is that death that will bring his resurrection, his new life, and through him new life to all of us. So what will appear as a defeat will be converted into victory. Victory also against sin, victory also against death, and victory for all the people who suffer under sin and its burden. It will be a victory for all. But before this victory comes, there are a lot of events that are taking place in the whole story, or the whole drama, if you like, of our Passion. That's why it is also called Passion Sunday. The Gospel reading is very long in the Mass. The Passion reading from this year it is on Palm Sunday, the reading from the Gospel of Matthew. Of course, most of the Passion readings are similar, but certain things, of course, happen. How Judas betrays Jesus. Judas betrays Jesus in order to get some financial advantage, those 30 silver coins, but also because he may have had some other reasons. You know, he probably was not even fully aware of what his action is going to do for Jesus. I am not sure if he knew exactly that what he is going to do is going to lead Jesus to crucifixion. Why I am saying this? Because after that, he went and hung himself. After he realized that his act was going to take Jesus to that end, he could not bear that, and he hung himself. You know, my dear friends, often when we do certain things with impulse, with the impulse of the moment, without thinking about what would be the consequences, for oneself and for others. We act on impulses. And it is always good to think what we are going to. That's why people even say that before you speak, think twice. Or sometimes when they say count 10, 1 to 10 before you react in anger or something like that. Which means that we need to really think about our actions. I don't know if he understood that he was seriously betraying Jesus. Many times we, for our for our financial advantage or for some other advantage to get promotion in our jobs or to get a good word from the superior and to be in the good books of the superior, we go and betray our own colleagues who trust in us, who are friends of us. So we play on both sides, being friendly on one side and then going and betraying somebody else. Again, in the Passion, we also find how Jesus really is suffering in the Garden of Gethsemane. So much so that he almost wavers of if he can accomplish his mission. You know, in the gospel it is mentioned, his drops of perspiration were like drops of blood. That is how frightened he was to take up this journey. For us, it is very nice to say he died for us on the cross and we are saved. Of course, we are saved. But do you know what he went through? It is important for us to think what he went through, how afraid actually he was. He even prayed to the Father, if possible, please take this cup away from me. Yes, sometimes we too are so frightened that we don't want to take the real step we should take to follow God, to follow his commandments, to follow his desire that we help the poor, that we help people who are in need. We think about it, then we say, no, I have other needs. No, I have other things to do. So at this moment, I will leave this opportunity to help somebody or to do something for God or to follow strictly God's ways. We dither and we give up. Jesus did not give up. That's a very important lesson for us, that despite his fears, despite his drops of perspiration turning into drops of blood, he did not give up. He knew what his mission was and that his mission had to be at any cost accomplished. And finally, very important thing that he says is, not my will, but your will be done. Obedience to the will of God. God has sent Jesus for a certain mission, but Jesus has also sent you and me for a certain mission to be accomplished in this world. Not just my own salvation, which is important, not just my own security with heaven. Many people think that what I am doing is doing to save myself. Yes, that is important. But we also need to work as a community of believers. We work for one another. We work with one another for our own salvation and for the salvation of others, because that is what God's plan is. God's will through Jesus was to save the world. God's plan for you and for me is also to contribute in his mission. Again, sometimes I feel shy to say this, but I am saying, I am doing in my own little way, proclaiming the word of God and making ourselves aware, me becoming aware in the process of what God plans for me and what God desires from me. And it is sometimes difficult to leave my earthly, physical, lustful desires of greed, of power, of other things, to follow God. But that is the challenge, that is. And today on Palm Sunday, as we enter into the Holy Week, there is only this week that is left for us to accomplish what we started on Ash Wednesday, to make ourselves more available to God, more available to people, more available for prayer, more available to do acts of charity. Those were the three things that we started on Ash Wednesday: prayer and fasting and almsgiving, acts of charity. We can do that still, and I invite you also to please share these videos with others and ask them to subscribe. Thank you very much.